Good afternoon. Thanks for joining us. We begin with developing news on the desperate search for that submersible lost while trying to explore the wreck of the Titanic. The U.S. Coast Guard says a debris field has now been found, and it's believed that all 5 people on board are lost. We'll bring you the very latest. And in our second half, we look at bike theft. Have you ever had your ride stolen? What more can you do to prevent it? And what steps should police and cities take? I'm Dan Burritt, in for Michelle Elliott. Welcome to BC Today. Thanks for joining us today. We begin with an update on the search for the submersible lost while diving to the wreck of the Titanic. And it's not a good one. Moments ago, the U.S. Coast Guard announced that the debris found is consistent with a catastrophic loss of the pressure chamber inside the Titan submersible. They say the families have been notified, and the U.S. Coast Guard is offering its condolences. That news conference is ongoing right now. Reporters are asking questions. Let's listen in right now from Boston.
The question is, where does the wreck lie in relation to the Titanic? I didn't hear the Admiral's answer. I think 1,600 feet. Was that correct, Admiral?
Yep, you got it.
So that's off the bow of Titanic. It's in an area where there is not any debris of Titanic. It is a smooth bottom. To my knowledge and anything I've seen, there's no Titanic wreckage in that area. And again, 200 plus meters from the bow. And consistent with the location of last communication for an implosion in the water column. And the size of the debris field is consistent with that implosion in the water column.
Thanks.
Well, if I can ask you a question, in terms of the timing here, you say that this was a catastrophic implosion. And I know it's early on, but is it your estimation that this happened right at the moment when they lost contact, an hour and 45 minutes after their descent?
So the question was about the timing of the catastrophic implosion. Right now, it is too early to tell with that. We know that as we've been prosecuting this search over the course of the last 72 hours and beyond, that we've had sonar buoys in the water nearly continuously and have not detected any catastrophic events when those sonar buoys have been in the water. So,
Admiral, can you describe what happens from here, sir, in the next days and weeks in terms of finding any more debris? What happens from here?
So we will. The question was, what happens from here? What's the next phase? And so right now, again, our thoughts are with the families and making sure that they have an understanding as best as we can provide of what happened and begin to find some closure. In terms of the large process, we're going to continue to investigate the site of the debris field. And then I know that there's also a lot of questions about how, why, and when did this happen. And so, you know, those are questions that we will collect as much information as we can on now, while the governments are meeting and discussing, you know, what an investigation of this nature of a casualty might look like. This is something that happened. I'll just remind everybody. This is something that happened in a remote portion of the ocean with people from several different countries around the world, and so it is a complex case to work through. But I'm confident that those questions will begin to get answered.
Will the Coast Guard lead the investigation, sir?
The question was there any suggestion that time factors may have played a role or a consideration in the casualty here? And so the debris field is consistent with a catastrophic implosion of the vessel. Again, while we were prosecuting the search, we had listening devices in the water throughout and did not hear any signs of catastrophic failure from those. And so we're going to continue to investigate, or we're going to continue to document the information there and understand, based on all the information we have, the timeline. So the question was, what are the resources required for the investigation, and which ships will be pulling out and staying in? And so it's too early for me to talk about an investigation. That's a decision that's going to be taken outside of the search and efforts that I was leading. But we do have a number of vessels. We have 9 vessels on the scene right now. We had medical personnel on scene. We had other technicians on scene. And so we will begin to demobilize personnel and vessels from the scene over the course of the next 24 hours. But we're going to continue remote operations on the seafloor. And I don't have a timeline for when we would intend to stop remote operations on the seafloor at this point.
Admiral, as a result of this, do you think there should be changes in the way these are safety rated or inspected so that this won't happen again?
Yeah, the question was essentially about, do you think that there should be changes in safety ratings or inspection for these standards? I know that there's a lot of questions about why, how, when this happened, and the members of the Unified Command, have those questions too, as professionals and experts that work in this environment. And this is an incredibly difficult and dangerous environment to work in out there. But those questions about the regulations that apply and the standards, that's going to be, I'm sure, focus of future review. Right now, we're focused on documenting the scene and continuing the subfloor.
I know we don't know the timing here. We don't know the timing here, but there was the banging noises yesterday that redirected and redeployed the ROVs to this area. Is there anything conclusive in those noises, and did that redirection and then finding this debris field today all help?
So throughout the search efforts, we reacted to the information that we had available to us, and while we continue to send it off for deeper analysis. Again, really complex operating environment for us to work in. Let me check with the experts, but there doesn't appear to be any connection between the noises and the location on the seafloor. Again, this was a catastrophic implosion of the vessel, which would have generated a significant broadband sound down there that the sonar buoys would have picked up.
Admiral, a lot of questions about who might be.
Admiral, you mentioned closure for the families. Admiral, can I just ask you about your comment regarding the families?
They dropped into the ocean today, arrived early this morning. It seems that Swiftly was able to find the debris field. We talked about the speed of that. And also, were all of the assets involved moved as swiftly as possible to the area? And was any help turned away, as some lawmakers have criticized the government?
This was a incredibly complex operation, and we were able to mobilize an immense amount of gear to the site in just a really remarkable amount of time, given the fact that we started without any sort of vessel response plan for this or any sort of pre-staged resources. And so the equipment that was brought on site this morning that we were using was a pelagic ROV capable of operating at 6,000 meters, cameras, sonar, other articulating arms and resources on it. And it, we had to transport it here through C-17 aircraft. This is 2 aircraft that it took to get this up here. And so we've really had the right gear on site and worked as swiftly as possible to bring all of the capabilities that we had to bear to this search and rescue effort. And it was just a huge international and interagency effort to make this happen. So I'm really grateful for all of the responders that came out to support this and really search for the vessel. It is a difficult day for all of us, and it's especially difficult for the families, and our thoughts are with the families today. But this was an immense support, and we had the right gear on the bottom to find it. So thank you.
Admiral, you mentioned the Admiral.
Will you attempt to recover the bodies, can we ask you, though? The victims, will they be recovered?
Thank you so much, everyone, for attending this afternoon. There are no future planned press conferences. Updates will be shared to the USCG Northeast Twitter page, and our staff will be available to take down any questions following this.
That was the live update from Boston by the U.S. Coast Guard on the Titan submersible lost while diving to the wreck of the Titanic. They've announced that the debris was consistent with what they call a catastrophic loss of the pressure chamber inside the submersible. They say the families have been notified and the Coast Guard is offering its condolences. Our CBC News colleague Jessica Singer is following this story from St. John's. She joins us now. It's been a long day. Jessica, we appreciate your time. What more did officials tell us a few moments ago?
Yeah, so shortly before that conference where we just heard that devastating news that it's likely the 5 people who were in that Titan submersible are dead, OceanGate sent a statement and they say, quote, "We now believe that our CEO, Stockton Rush, Shahzada Dawood, and his son Suleiman Dawood, Hamish Harding, and Paul-Henri Nargeolet have sadly been lost. They say these men were true explorers who shared a distinct spirit of adventure and a deep passion for exploring and protecting the world's oceans. Our hearts are with these 5 souls and every member of their families during this tragic time." And the statement also says that we grieve the loss of life and joy they brought to everyone they knew. It goes on to continue saying that they're grieving the loss of the 5 members who were in that Titan submersible, and they respectfully ask that the privacy of these families is respected during this time. So that's a statement from OceanGate that we recently received.
We heard from Rear Admiral John Mauger there with the U.S. Coast Guard saying it was a huge international response. We know there was Canada was helping out, the United States. They had other international help from Britain and I believe from France. A difficult day, as they said, especially for the families. What has it been like to see the international response in St. John's, the staging area? It was essentially the closest place they could stage from to get to the site.
Yeah, so everything down from St. John's International Airport down to the St. John's Harbor here, it's just been so busy, people lining to watch how things unfold. We've had transport trucks, military aircraft landing here. It's not something you definitely don't always see here at St. John's. And as you mentioned, reporters from all over the world, CNN, Fox News, Al Jazeera, lining up at the harbor. And it certainly has been just the talk of the city. It's the thing that's on everybody's minds right now, and it's palpable.
Have you had a chance to speak with people in St. John's and over the past few days? And if so, what have they had to say about all of this?
I myself haven't, but many of my colleagues have, and the consensus is that it's just picturing what could have happened and now what we know most definitely probably did happen down there. It's just an eerie thing to experience. I remember somebody, one of my colleagues, Patrick Butler, spoke to somebody who was watching one of the vessels get loaded at the St. John's Harbor, and he was just he said it was eerie to think about how cold it was at the bottom of the ocean there, because when you're standing at the harbor, you're really just looking out at the Narrows, which is just a narrow path near some beautiful cliffs, and it's a beautiful sight. But when you're thinking about what's down there in the freezing water, as this individual said, definitely an eerie sight, and everybody's just really thinking about these family members right now. Definitely an eerie and uncomfortable situation to think about, for sure.
Well, and St. John's sadly is no stranger to maritime tragedy. It's had to deal with this for centuries, really, and being so close to the wreck of the Titanic in 1912. We've heard concerns about, or questions about, the safety of this vessel, this Titan submersible. What was being said there in the days before we got this sad update today?
Yeah, that's right. So we do know that dozens of industry experts, and these include scientists and explorers, they did issue a warning to OceanGate CEO Stockton Rush back in 2018, voicing their concerns about the safety of this submersible. And the letter included a warning that the experimental approach that's being adopted by OceanGate could have negative outcomes, of course, ranging to those that are minor or to those that are catastrophic. And that the letter also said that these would have serious consequences for everyone in the industry. OceanGate did publish a blog post in 2019 about the calls for them to have an accredited outside body review and certify its work. And it says, OceanGate's blog post says that, in part, that trying to get certified would be a multi-year process that would hinder innovation. The blog post also says that OceanGate does a 25-point risk assessment before every dive, and it takes safety concerns very seriously. We know that the Titan submersible was not credited or certified, rather, by the typical protocols that you would see many other submarines or submersibles be certified for. So, yeah.
And it does raise more questions around whether or not there ought to be some sort of either industry, perhaps international standard for vessels like this. We know that vessels that have gone down before have all had to go through some type of safety checks, etc. And certainly people have been weighing in with concerns about that. We heard some about what may be the next steps in this case. Are you able to recap what the Coast Guard said?
Yeah, in terms of next steps, I believe that they said that there's still a lot of questions in terms of the why and the how. So we don't know when exactly this happened. They said there were sonar buoys down there, and that they didn't detect that catastrophic implosion or anything to indicate an exact time of when this did happen. So I believe that they are going to continue searching the debris, trying to determine exactly that why and how of when this catastrophic implosion did happen. There's still, of course, a lot of questions up in the air, but during their search, they did find those 5 different major pieces of debris that did signify that these were part of the Titan submersible, and that the 5 people in there, unfortunately, did pass away with them.
And Jessica, remind us, what were those pieces of debris that officials said they found?
Yeah, so I know for sure that when the ROV was searching, they did find part of a pressure chamber for the submersible. I'm just looking at my notes here.
And we appreciate just telling our audience, of course, that this is a bit of a dynamic situation with this update at 12 o'clock. So we appreciate if it's we won't call it fly by night, but this is how it works with breaking situations.
Yeah, still trying to get everything in order there for sure. And you could just hear at the conference, obviously, a lot of questions being asked, and still a lot of answers left to be determined on that front.
Jessica, remind us, if you can, as much as you can, what sort of resources basically poured into St. John's to try to find this submersible, and the hope was, of course, finding the 5 people on board and getting them out alive.
Yeah, so of course, again, lots of equipment being brought into the St. John's Harbor. We had, for instance, there was an ROV called the Magellan ROV. This one was said to be one of the most important because it can operate, of course, very deep in the ocean. And according to a statement from the Explorers Club, which Hamish Harding and Paul Henry were both a part of, that statement said that Magellan ROV has been to the Titanic site more than any other ROV. So we had equipment like that down there. 3 more ships arrived early today. That included a French ship that deployed the Victor 6000, and that's named after its ability to be able to dive up to 6,000 meters. So lots of different ROVs searching, lots of different types of boats and vessels. And one of them, the most notably, the Polar Prince, that was the one that basically took the submersible out to ocean. So, yeah, lots of aircraft as well. Yeah.
A lot of resources to try and find people in a very desperate situation. CBC News reporter Jessica Singer speaking to us live from St. John's. Jessica, we appreciate your time again. We know it's been a long day and a long week. Thanks for your work. Much appreciated.
Thanks for having me.
Now, this Titan submersible has attracted interest here in BC. You know Ron Toigo as the majority owner of the Vancouver Giants, and his family owns White Spot. He made 2 trips to the Titanic over the past 2 summers, spending almost 40 hours on board that same submersible. He spoke to the early edition from Vancouver this morning before the latest Coast Guard updates, and our host Stephen Quinn asked him if the risks were laid out to him ahead of his trips.
Oh yeah, you sign a complete disclosure agreement that you know, it says right in it that you can die. So it makes it very clear this is an experimental ship. It is not certified, and then you ask all the questions and get satisfied whether you are or you're not, and if you're not, then you move on and don't do it. But there is full disclosure on everything. In spite of all that, I still, there's 0 alcohol allowed on any of those trips. It's a very serious trip. It's a scientific expedition, and it's run that way. And they take everything very serious.
And you've been on it twice. On your first trip, I understand the submersible actually got stuck. Can you describe what happened?
Well, what happens is you descend. You're supposed to drop weights to slow down your descent, and then if you don't have the weights, you're not going to make it to the bottom. And the mechanism that disperses the weights off of it didn't release. So we ended up we slowed our descent down with the engines and just landed at the bottom of the ocean, and then worked on trying to get the weights to release, and then it was explained that the weights are all designed, they're on squibs, so in the next 24 to 30 hours all the weights drop anyways automatically. They just rust off because of the environment you're in. Or there's another, the ultimate fail-proof system is if there's a complete breakdown on all the technology on it and the batteries fail, you can pump out the pins hydraulically. There's 4 pins, and they show you just pump it, and the pins get pushed out, and then it's released from the base, and you float right to the top. So there was a number of ways of getting out of it, and but eventually we figured it out. Stockton figured it out, and ended up dropping 1 pin, and enough weight slid out, and then we were able to make it back to the top. But there was no panic. It was okay, here's the situation, and here's the options, and this is what we have to work with. And once you knew that, you felt okay. Well, at least, and you knew, and worst case scenario is they drop the bottom, and he's out of business for the rest of the year. So, but there's a way out, and so you always felt okay. At least they have all the answers.
Businessman Ron Toigo is speaking to CBC's The Early Edition this morning about his time on board this Titan submersible. And again, if you're just joining us, the update from the U.S. Coast Guard is a sad one. Officials say they believe a, quote, catastrophic implosion has occurred. They've found pieces of the Titan submersible, and all 5 people on board are believed to have died. The Titanic was already a massive gravesite. The debris field was found about 200 meters in front of the bow. That site, now another gravesite. Coming up, it is summer, a normally great time to jump on a bike for a leisurely ride or intense climb, whatever your style. But the thieves are busy. Have you ever had your bike stolen? What did you do to try to keep the criminals away? That's after this CBC News Update with Robert Zimmerman.
Good afternoon. The Village of Lytton and the Regional District have launched a lawsuit against CN and CP Rail as well as Transport Canada. It claims they breached their duty of care to the village prior to a devastating fire 2 years ago. 2 people died and most of the community was destroyed. The sexual assault case against former Kelowna Mayor Colin Basran has been stayed. The BC Prosecution Service says the special prosecutor assigned to the case made the decision after a review of new information from the RCMP and Basran's lawyer. And as we've been hearing on the show, the owner of the Titan submersible says all 5 people on board are believed to be dead. Officials have confirmed debris found inside the search area near the wreck of the Titanic is from the submersible. The crew last contacted the surface on Sunday morning. And now the forecast on the north coast. Cloudy this afternoon with a high of 15. Highs reaching 24 with local smoke and a chance of showers and thunderstorms in the Peace. In the central interior, high of 23 and mainly cloudy with a risk of thunderstorms as well. Highs in the low 20s with a mix of sun and cloud in the Kootenays. In the southern interior, some sun and cloud with a high of 23. And for Metro Vancouver, Greater Victoria and the Fraser Valley, mainly sunny this afternoon with highs reaching 26 inland. I'll have more local news at the top of the hour. Now back to Dan with BC Today.
Thanks very much, Robert. Welcome back to BC Today on CBC Radio 1. We're also streaming live on video on cbc.ca/BC as well as YouTube. In Shelllouth, you're hearing us at 9:90 a.m. And hello to everyone listening to us in Blue River in BC on 8:60 a.m. Just before we get to bikes and bike theft, it appears many Canadians are still spending plenty of money. Retail sales rose by 1.1% in April across this country, according to Statistics Canada, coming in seriously higher than expectations. Retailers across the country raked in nearly $66 billion in April, up almost 3% from last year. Just about every type of store saw increased sales during the month, with food and beverage shops leading the way. Furniture, electronics, and appliance sales are the exceptions, though, with shrinking sales. Provincially, BC saw a 0.5% increase. Retail expert David Ian Gray spoke about the numbers with the CBC's Anita Bath yesterday.
We're seeing automotive starting to come back online, and the car companies are not giving us deals. But on the other hand, it was noted in the press release from SaskCan, general merchandise and secondarily clothing were significantly up. And that, if it's a clothing story, it's really because we didn't buy anything for 2 years. We're starting to replenish, but there's no inflation in clothing. In fact, if anything, things are kind of perpetually on sale. So it just depends on the category we're shopping, whether or not it's an inflation story. But certainly that is a big chunk of the portfolio of buying is where we're buying fewer items, but we're having to spend more on them.
Let's talk a little bit more about where we're spending. So you mentioned clothing there. You know, people didn't buy clothing for so long. Now they have to catch up on all the things they didn't buy. What about things like furniture and appliances not seeing an increase? Why is that?
Yeah, anything to do with the home has been really eroding through the latter half of last year and into this year. And I think part of that, it sounds a bit bleak, and they were actually some of the worst performing categories, including building supplies for renos and things like that. But they ran so hot 2020, 2021 that this is really just kind of a return to normal, if that makes sense. But for a given point in time, it's no fun if you're those types of retailers right now.
David, just quickly here, what kind of impact could the increase in retail sales actually have on the Bank of Canada's attempts to slow inflation?
Yeah, so they're very concerned. So the consumers right now are still demanding items, and that's the part that wasn't expected. So the pundits, including ourselves, are looking at the Bank of Canada to once again do a rate increase in July, and they're really concerned with the product price inflation. But as this comes into the consumers day to day and their credit card debt and their mortgages getting renewed, the game that's being played may run into a kind of a recession and a consumer-driven one. So we're really wary of where the fall looks and is going to take us.
As of Monday this week, bikers in Vancouver have been able to run errands without worrying about bolt cutters sabotaging their ride to and from home or work. Vancouver's first free bike valet service will run all summer long with staff parking and then retrieving your wheels for you. The valet is beside the Vancouver City Centre SkyTrain station on Granville Street and can fit about 100 bikes, e-scooters, strollers, and other personal mobility devices. Open rain or shine from June 19th to September 1st. One of the reasons the service was started was to fight the uptick in bike theft. We'd love to hear your thoughts and experiences on this. Have you ever had your bike stolen? What was that experience like? What safety measures do you take to protect your ride and yourself? And what do you think cities and perhaps police should and can do to help prevent or crack down on bike theft? Give us a call now, 1-800-825-5950. Our number in Metro Vancouver is 604-669-3733. Star 690 on your cell phone. You can email bctoday@cbc.ca. Joining us now is Pablo Zacharias. He is Executive Director of Better Environmentally Sound Transportation, or BEST. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for inviting me.
First of all, a little bit more about why bike valet service is so needed, do you think?
Well, the bike valet, as most people know, is like a code check for your bicycle. So we have staff the whole time that are taking care of your bike in a fenced environment. So this is very safe for most bikes. We have had no theft over the service started in 2006. So it has been great in promoting people to use their bikes as a means for transportation, but also to feel safe and at peace with your bike being taken care of.
We've certainly been for years talking about bike theft, and perhaps with more cameras around more homes and people having them in your hands, we're seeing more bike theft take place. Do you have any numbers on how bad the problem is right now, whether it be in Metro Vancouver or in BC?
I don't have any numbers with me today, but we know that is something on the rise, especially when people don't properly lock their bikes or leave them in spaces that are not properly lit. So one of the suggestions we make to everyone is to register their bikes in Project 529, which is very easy, and you can do it at our bike valet locations. And that way you deter the thieves from taking your bike because they know you put a little shield on your bike that makes people know that it's registered. So it's easy to retrieve it if it's stolen. And also invest in a good lock, and of course use the bike valet, which is the best way to keep your bike safe.
Before we get to more of the prevention side, remind us what Project 529 is and where do you register? How does it work?
So they can visit project529.com to locate the spaces where you can register your bike for free, or you can do it online and then request the sticker to be sent to you. It's a service that it's called 529 because it was like a side project of the team that created it, and they were working on it 5 to 9 instead of 9 to 5. So it's a neat name. And you can add your bike, check if there's a bike find, check which found bikes are in the registry, and you can do it in all of BC. So it's something really easy to do with your bike, and it helps you in that regard. Right. And on all the bike valet locations, we tend to have the registration as well.
Let's go to Keith in Whistler, who joins us on the line. Keith, you are too familiar with bikes being stolen. What's been your experience?
My experience has been interesting. I've had a bike stolen in Japan and caught the thief there. I had a bike stolen in Vancouver, caught the thief as well. And another couple of times that I've seen bikes that were stolen via the Vancouver Stolen Bikes Facebook group, and got a bike back to the owner that way, involving the police. The other 2 times it was just on my own, so not always recommended, but because it could easily turn very quickly. Some of the people stealing the bikes don't have a whole lot to lose, unfortunately, and being in the middle is not good. But I handled it pretty well. I talked to the police afterwards, and they said what I did wasn't really recommended, like I said, but I did what. It worked out in the end. So
this is the part where I have to ask, what did you do?
What I did is I got stolen near Science World. I was on Beer Island, and I did have my bike locked up with a proper, $150 bike lock. But the thing is with bike locks, anytime you're simply slowing down the thief, and with all the e-bikes that are going to be out there shortly, you're just slowing them down. So unfortunately, I've got a bike now that I don't want it to get stolen, but if it gets stolen, if I'm riding in parts of the city and I leave it out, that's kind of expected. But I went down and put the bike rack on the car and drove down, and within about 20 minutes, I found my bike and saw the person, and I said, "That's my bike." Some expletives were shared, and got the bike back, and he wanted money for it. And I said, "Okay, I'll meet you around the corner." And I just drove away. And the whole way back to Commercial Drive, I told anyone that would listen at a stoplight, I just got my bike stolen and I got it back. So I was pretty happy.
Yeah, I know that that's not the move that police would recommend, but yeah, that's it worked for you, and that's good. And I'm glad you stayed safe. Thanks very much for your call, Keith. Pablo, I saw you nodding your head a bit there on the video screen. What do you make of Keith's experience?
Well, he took quite a risk, but congratulations for getting your bike back. Mm-hmm. I guess that when you get your property stolen, you react sometimes without a lot of thinking. But I'm glad he got his bike back twice. So in that regard, I think he's right. With locks, we are just delaying the thief from taking our bike, and it's also a community effort, right? If you see mm-hmm. someone trying to chop a lock, try to take videos, take photos, try to deter them from doing it, call the police. And I think that's important. I've seen other people also using air tags, like these little tags that have gotten cheaper and cheaper to put on their bikes for GPS tracking. And you can put it inside the frame so it's not visible. Mm. That's one other way to keep your bike safe.
Also a good idea. Chad in Chilliwack. Chad, what's your experience with bike theft?
Oh, unfortunately, I've had a few bikes stolen over the years. One notable one I actually managed to get back. I had locked it up outside a car rental place for the weekend. Or actually, it was just for a day, but it was just with a cable lock. And I thought, oh, it's daytime. I was kind of in a rush to get to work, and came back. The bike was gone. Cable lock was laying there. So cable locks are no good. A couple days later, I was downtown Victoria and actually saw my bike, somebody walking it on the sidewalk. And my jaw kind of dropped because I recognized it right away. It was my bike. And the person looked at me and said, what are you looking at? I said, oh, that's a nice bike. And they actually offered to sell it to me for $40, my bike, which was probably worth, I don't know, $500 or so. And
so you paid for it?
What, pardon me?
Did you pay for it to get it back, or what did you do?
Well, I was with a girlfriend at the time, and I kind of looked at her and I said, like, hey, this yeah, I think I said to the person, yeah, okay, I'll buy it from you. And I said, let's go to the bank machine. And in the meantime, while we were walking across the street to the bank machine, I motioned for my girlfriend to call the police. I had already reported it stolen a couple days prior. And anyways, went to the bank machine, got some cash out, and came out like not really sure what I was going to do. But then I saw the person had leaned the bike against a pole, and they had stood like a meter or so away from it, and I kind of motioned to my wallet like I was going to give them the money, and then in a sort of an impulse, I just jumped on the bike and rode away, and immediately called my girlfriend to make sure that she was somewhere safe, and then she was already on the phone with the police, and essentially I called them after and said, hey, like I had reported my bike stolen, I've just taken it back. They're like, yeah, you sure it was yours? I said, yeah, 100%. And they said, okay, well, as long as everybody's safe, and I guess that's that. But I guess the moral of the story, cable locks are no good. and once in a while, you might get your bike back, but that's not the usual, I don't think.
And make sure your girlfriend's safe, right?
Yeah. Totally. Yeah, she was tucked inside a store nicely.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Well, glad you got it back, Chad. We got some callers bold as brass here. My goodness. Pablo, do you hear similar stories like that? And Chad, thanks for your call.
Yeah, we hear them all the time. And a good thing, like talking about Victoria, that's one of our, most successful bike valet. We have now a seasonal location there that has been there. It will be there from March all the way until December 23rd. So for the whole year, you have a downtown bike valet location supported by the city of Victoria, mm-hmm. where you can safely leave your bike. So this wouldn't happen again. in Victoria at least. And we would love to set up a bike valet in Whistler and Chilliwack. Like, our project is to expand these seasonal locations so people know that throughout the year they can leave their bikes safely.
And just to clarify, what sort of security do you have around? Like, you lock the bike up, or the bike's up that you valet, but what other security do you have around to make sure that it's secure?
The locations are fenced, fully fenced, and we have staff. Depending on the amount of bikes that are left, we have.
We've lost a little bit of a signal from Pablo, but that's okay. We're going to push the numbers again. Hopefully you can give us a call. 1-800-825-5950. 604-669-3733 is our number in Metro Vancouver. Ever had your bike stolen? What did you do to get it back, if anything? Have you registered with project529.com? Do you find success with it? That kind of thing. How big of a problem is it where you live? And we saw this yesterday from our colleagues at Czech News, where a co-op lost its traveling cargo bike. They have a video of it, in fact, and we'll show it in just a moment when we can, of the thief. And perhaps this is an overused word. There it is. Rather brazenly using what looks like a saw or a bolt, saw, sparks flying, took off with it. They did recover it. I think it was in a wooded area, smashed up, but it is back. Quite something. And so for our radio, and for our radio audience, we'll explain that the video showed us somebody using a grinder to actually tear that lock off and take off with it. Thankfully, they found it, but little worse for wear. And Pablo's back with us as well. Pablo, I don't know if you heard about that case with the co-op bike, the cargo bike that was just stolen right in front of them.
Yeah, it happened. And also our partners of Capital Bike in Victoria, their cargo bike got stolen. That is quite a vehicle, but they got it back thanks to the support of the community and the Victoria Police. But yeah,
you could see it on their feed there. Yeah, it was just earlier this week. Quite something. Let's go to Monica in Penticton. Oh my goodness, Monica, I think you've got the record now for bikes stolen. How many has it been?
Well, it's been 6 in the past couple of years.
6?
And, yeah, but the trouble is the police on the phone the other day said that homeless people are allowed to own more than 3 or 4 bikes if they see them homeless, and they mix and match parts, and your bike will go up for sale a month later if the police get it and you didn't retrieve it from that program and didn't know, they'd found it because they don't call you. And then it goes up for sale at the PDSCL for $150 and you can't get it back. And a lot of times they scrape off serial numbers or mix and match parts. And I'm just a couple of blocks from the giant strip mall of a drug Compass House shelter place. So it's just a giant strip mall here in Penticton of theft, and the police are overdone. And they even drove past some guy on Main Street that was on my bike at the time, and it was a distinct colored bike. And I thought, oh great, this guy's going to be going down to the soup kitchen. And I got it, and he says, I'm not a regular bike thief. And I got my bike, but a week later it was restolen again, even though I had 2 locks on it. And the big locks don't work if it's cold, -3, the big locks, they seize up and you can't even take them off or put them on. So you wasted $50 on a big fat lock.
Certainly we know that there are people struggling with all sorts of things, be it addiction, mental health issues, etc., who may engage in crime in order to perhaps feed a habit. We know that has happened on occasion. Clearly this is frustrating for you, Monica.
That's where it is very frustrating, and because I don't have, I need it as mobility because I don't have any way to get around because I have a bad hip, and so it's my way of getting around. And this government has complexed things by this false information of legalizing drugs that aren't even safe, and so people are struggling to get their good deal of dope because they're getting ripped off and poisoned, and then they're trying to get some more, and they're allowed to do 12 offenses before it's presented before the court. So that means you can steal 12 bikes or smash 3 windshields and steal 3 different turkeys at 3 different stores, and just until it's 12, and then you just have to go to your probation officer, and they don't even have to do that.
Monica, can I ask you, Yeah, forgive the interruption. Just to wrap up, are you doing anything differently with your bike to make sure that it's more secure, as secure as you can?
I'm walking and limping on my foot. I got this bike. I got a good deal off some guy, and 2 days later it was stone cold flat. And I'm not a Tom girl. I don't know how to fix it, so it's hidden away in the house, and I haven't rode a bike since, and I've been limping around town and not going anywhere. So yeah, that's my next tactic, is nothing.
Well,
not going anywhere.
Well, I'm sorry to hear that, Monica. I'll tell you what, if there's anybody listening in Penticton and knows Monica or can connect her with somebody who can perhaps help repair her bike, this is the shout out, and maybe we can connect you with Pablo. Maybe he knows somebody in Penticton who can do a bit of repair work for you, Monica, because it sounds as if it...
So awesome.
Well, let's see what we can do. I'm going to jump to a couple of other calls, but Pablo, we'll connect you with Monica a little bit later. Andy's in Victoria. Andy's, what's been your experience?
Hi there. I had a few bikes stolen back when I was living in Vancouver in the 90s. Coincidentally, also was a founder of Best at one time. Congratulations, Pablo, on your position.
Thank you.
Let's see. And I've since moved to Victoria. Now I've had a few bikes stripped of kind of the loose parts that could easily be taken off of them. Yeah. But I'd recommend, but I haven't had a bike stolen in decades, mainly because I bring it with me. Like I'll bring it into offices where I have meetings or into parking garages and very well monitored areas that are less prone to crime.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that's great. Thanks very much for the call, Andy. We appreciate that. Going to jump to an email quickly. Barry writes us to say, Winners is a good place to get cheap bike accessories. That includes bike locks. I have had sturdy locks from Bell and Blackburn for under $15. Pablo, quickly, is that a good brand?
Yeah, they do the trick. You just have to check on the locks because they produce different qualities, right? So just make sure that the lock is 5 or more. 7 is ideal in the security scale, so to speak. So. Yeah.
Okay.
Those are good brands.
And one more email from Graham, just to, as we close in on our time here. Our family's had a number of bikes stolen over the years. We've always used very good locks, but there's no stopping determined thieves. We've talked about it's being basically a delaying tactic. Project 529 initiative is a useful tool in possible stolen bike recovery. All our rides are registered. We managed to recover one, but only because the individual had the presence of mind to check the bike they got against the 529 stolen bike database. So there's a shout out for 529 working as it ought to. Elizabeth is on the phone in Vancouver. Elizabeth, what's been your experience?
Hi, yeah. I was in a gas station close to my home, and there was a young man in there, and he had a scooter. So I started chatting with him, and I told him that I also had a scooter, and we were chit-chatting about that. And he had an e-bike story for me, and he's 15, going on 16, yeah. And he said that one of the kids, 2 kids at school, had accosted him and said, "Give me your bike." And I said, "What did you do?" And he goes, "I gave him my bike." And I also handed over his cell phone. So we're talking about this. And I said, "Well, why did you do that?" And he goes, "Because they had a knife." And I thought, okay, good call. So both went away, but he got them back because he had of course, Find My iPhone. And also he had put one of those pods on the bike as well. Mm-hmm. So the police actually went to the home of one of these young men and got both of them. And as we were leaving this gas station heading towards my home, because I told him I also had something for sale, obviously. And if he wanted, I brought it out to him. But so as we're leaving, he goes, "Oh my God, there they are." And I said, "Who?" And he goes, "Those 2 kids." And he goes, "Don't look." Of course I had to look. And so I turned around. There they were staring at him. And I'm 5'10". So I looked like the guy's mother. He was pretty short. But the whole story really upset me because he said this happens all the time to young people.
That's a difficult experience to have, certainly for basically anybody of any age. But if you get threatened at school with potential violence, Elizabeth, thanks for your call. Pablo, how common is that where the potential for violence is involved?
Well, thankfully, it's not that common. In BC, or not in the reports we've seen. We've had a couple of those experiences in the bike valet, and of course the instruction of our staff is not to engage because we have an insurance policy, which is also one of the pluses of the bike valet. So there's an insurance policy that protects the users and the bike riders and anyone leaving their vehicle with us, that if their bike is not retrieved, they will get the money from our insurance. So we don't ask our staff to be heroes.
That's a good idea. And we know, and we should emphasize this as well, we certainly hear that from police, where they encourage you to not take things into your own hands, try to get things back. But it's a frustration, isn't it, when you've spent sometimes thousands of dollars. And now, and I wanted to get to this with you, Pablo, the rise of the popularity of e-bikes and the big rebates people can get. They've already maxed out that rebate pot. What about the worry that the more expensive the rides get, that the more theft we'll see?
Well, it is what it is. I guess that's a condition of the economy and the the difficulties, the complex problems that we have in our cities and our municipalities. But I guess that users need to become more and more responsible with their vehicles as they get more expensive. When you buy a car, you get insurance, you have the GPS tracking, and you have to do the same if you're buying a $3,000 bike. You need to establish the mechanisms to be as safe as you can, to avoid theft, and to be able to retrieve your bike as fast as possible if it does get stolen, right? None of these solutions are a miracle, and maybe they will fail, but at least you can get, if you have insurance, you can get your money back. If you have an AirPod or one of those trackers, you can easily retrieve it. And if you're a member of 529, you can also get the support of the whole community. And of course, if you use the bike valet, if it's available in your municipality, then you're sure that your bike will be safe for the time being in the bike valet.
If you want to try and squeeze in a couple more calls based on your experience, have you ever had your bike stolen? What are you doing to make sure that it stays safe? 1-800-825-5950 is our number. 604-669-3733. You can also hit star 690 on your cell phone. Pablo, where do you bike specifically?
I bike around Vancouver. I don't have a car. I don't drive. I'm a cyclist. So I live in Metro Vancouver, very close to downtown in Mount Pleasant. So I have the possibility to bike around town and also get on the bus and put my bike on the front. And as one of the callers was saying, it's always good to try to bring your bike with you indoors if you're going for a meeting or something. And most spaces allow you to have your bike in there. And I get around, and I also use Mobi. Big shout out to the bike share service, which is also great because you don't own the bike, and that's a great solution as well. Bike share services, you use it to do short drives. You get to a transit station, and then you can get around and not worry because the bike is not yours. You just put it in the right place, and you're done. So that's a great solution. Sometimes I don't use my own bike for months at a time because
that's a good way to make sure it doesn't get stolen, isn't it?
Totally.
Yeah.
So that way I get the service of using a bike without having to worry for my own property.
Pablo Zacharias, Executive Director of BEST, we appreciate your time and your expertise on this. We certainly know that biking is popular in Metro Vancouver, and hopefully, as you mentioned, there may be some expansion of your service outside Metro Vancouver to those places where perhaps the infrastructure for biking is not quite up to what it is here in Vancouver. Thanks for your time.
No, thanks for the call, and please visit bikevalet.ca to find out where we are and to ask for bike valet in your municipality.
Thanks very much. That's it for our show today. My thanks to everyone who called and emailed and joined our discussion. You can always email us, bctoday@cbc.ca. Download the podcast at BC Today. I'm Dan Burritt, in for Michelle Elliott today. Thanks for joining us. Let's chat tomorrow.